Okay, so we're going to continue religion. And I'm just going to pull up some videos to share. Oh, the other thing I want you to be aware of is for this week 10, if you go to the lessons, I put the assignment, the book report assignment on there. Now, it's not due until November 12th, but the assignment and guidelines are up now. So if you haven't started on a book yet, please do so. Once again, it doesn't have to be a huge book. You could even use a children's book to do this. And the point of this assignment is to see if you can apply the terms we've been learning in class towards some literature that you're reading. And make sure you read the guidelines before you do the assignment, because it's not a typical book report. What I'm asking for is like a half-page description or summary of the book. Just tell me what the book's about. And then you're going to give me 15 vocab words from the book. It can be anywhere in the book, any of those bold-faced words or from the glossary. And you're going to give me examples from your book of that word. So you're not defining the term for me. I know what the term means. What you're going to show me is that you understand what the word means. So when that word is occurring in the book, you're going to give me an example. So for example, if I pick the word enculturation, I'd put the word number one, enculturation, and then I would give an example from the book. And it can be a quote or a paraphrase or a description. And so I could say, Maria's mother taught her how to make tortillas from masa. And that shows me that the person who wrote that understands the word enculturation. So that's what I'm looking for in the 15 vocab terms. The summaries were 50 points. Each term's worth 10 points. So if you only gave me 10 terms and the summary, the best you could get is 150 out of 200 points. So hopefully it won't be too hard on you. And you're welcome to use a book you're reading in another class. But it can even be a fiction book, because a lot of fictional books, they really develop the culture of the characters and the civilizations in the fictitious novels. So that's what that's all about. So if you scroll down on there, you'll see past the videos, the book reports down there at the bottom. So if you click on that, you'll see the guidelines. And if you don't see a place to submit it, you can always copy and paste it into the comment box. All right. Off to our videos.
Experience taught Stone Age people the difference between what poisoned them and what satisfied their hunger. Their minds gathered empirical realities necessary for survival. They did the best they could in drawing conclusions about the world beyond them. They assumed that they were at the center of the universe, which they saw as flat, small, and under the sky. They called themselves the people, and thought that strangers were creatures of another sort, less human than they. They believed that if they ate the flesh of a strong beast, they might acquire its spirit. Or if they ate a portion of the body of a leader who had died, they might acquire his special qualities.
That's that hermetic cannibalism.
That the sun and moon they saw moving across the sky were animate beings. A face of a dead person they knew and recognized in the peculiar shapes on the face of a rock was associated with the living spirit of that person dwelling within that rock. With no defined difference between spirit and materiality, they believed that in preserving a corpse, they were also helping to preserve the spirit of one who had died. They believed that a body went limp at death because the spirit that had been within it had left it for the invisible world of the spirits. They felt no urge to meld these ideas of spirits and materiality into a consistent picture. People correctly associated their own movement with their will, and they believed that all movement was the product of will. They saw insects as moving by will. They assumed that plants grew because of a will within. They saw the sun, moon, and stars as closer than they really were, and as moving by will. For Stone Age people, will was spirit, and they saw the world as filled with many spirits, or to use another word, gods. They saw gods within everything that moved. There was a god within the wind and another god within the rivers. A god in the ocean made the waters rush to the beach and then retreat. The sun was a god. They saw their reflection in water and believed that what they were seeing was their spirit. People attributed much that happened to the spirits and to magic. Lightning, thunder, rain, the tides, procreation, and fire were all magic. And fire was not only a product of magic, it was a manifestation of spirit. Their view of the world came to them with invented stories. These were stories that were told and accepted without recognition of a difference between fact and fantasy. Every society had its stories about creation, each with a different twist. Storytelling described their world in a way that they could understand. There were stories of a god having created them out of earth, and a story among others that they had been created from the bark of a tree. An occasional exception to universal order might be described as the work of a demon spirit, an evil of sorts. There were stories about evil and dread, a story with a threatening demon of some sort producing more excitement than one without danger. People believed that if the gods could perform magic, so too could they. The earliest form of religious ritual was an attempt at magic through imitation, such as painting a face on the belly of a pregnant woman in hope that the magic of the drawing would encourage birth. Hunter-gatherers were trying to get by rather than to change their world. They tended to believe the world would always be as the gods had made it. They had no sense of social progress or image of humanity's capabilities beyond their abilities. The imagination of those who had a biological potential for genius and those of normal intelligence were limited by their culture. Had it been otherwise, modern society would have appeared much sooner.
Would it now? Any thoughts on that one? Anybody? Anybody here?
Yeah, I feel like it could have happened a little quicker. I mean, you never know.
Right.
The only
But
time,
that's
only way you
kinda-
would know is if you had a time machine and take the technology you have now all the way back to then. But then I guess that'd be cheating, huh?
Right. But that's kind of their secular humanist bias where they see religion as just a social construct to answer questions. But if we would have evolved quicker, we wouldn't have been so dependent on superstition and we could have been dependent on science, I think is where they were headed with that one. But that was kind of a giveaway. All right. Thanks, David. The next video I want to show you relates back to animism and kind of how it's manifest today. And I'm a lover of trees, but these people were even kind of blowing me away in this next video. So here's a little hippie tree love.
Deep in the woods of East Tennessee, an extremist eco group called Nazarite's Vow bewails the violation of American nature.
My people.
outraged. I think we're deeply hurting in America. And I think we're deeply craving answers. I think we've really lost our sense of identity. As we've evolved into technology and into industrialized society.
Bring me to this cathedral. Bring me to these guys. Bring me to this rock that has the most beautiful light.
I've seen clear cuts and I've seen burnt trees. And I felt outraged. But I haven't screamed and I haven't cried. And I need to.
Oh my goodness. Okay. You gotta talk to me about that one. I just realized in watching this that this was actually a spoof or a satire of the video I wanted to show you, where these young people are actually making fun of the people in the other video. So let me see if I can find that real quick. But you're going to talk to me on this one, so prepare yourself. Okay, I got to go to my channel. Playlist. Created playlist. And I need to find animism. I only have a couple animistic videos, so if you find any good ones, please send them to me and I'll add them to my playlist for posterity. There we are. Okay, this is the one I meant to show you. I didn't realize I had a spoof one going.
Deep in the woods of North Carolina, an extremist eco group called Earth First bewails the violation of American nature.
I want to mourn the loss of all the old growth trees I've seen, and tell them that we love them and that we don't want them to die, that there are some people here who do care. So I want you to know that, trees, that we care.
I think we are deeply hurting in America. I think we are deeply craving answers. I think that we've lost our identity as we have evolved into technology and into industrialized society. Bring me to this cathedral.
Amen.
Bring me to those guys. Bring me to this rock that has the most incredible life. That makes me feel alive.
I've looked at clear cuts and burnt forest, and I felt outraged, but I didn't scream and I didn't cry. And I need to.
from men.
Okay, you got to talk to me about that one. I didn't realize the first one I showed you was a spoof on the second one I showed you, but that made it especially enjoyable for me. I'd love to see your faces if someone wants to talk to me. Hey, David.
So I think
Kendall.
I think that they it's a little exaggerated in both of them, really. Especially the first one because it was obviously a spoof. It was making fun of them, but
Right.
even
I
the
didn't
second
even
one,
know it was a spoof till I watched it this time, which kind of cracked
I
me up.
think that even in the second one, the original one, it was just a little much.
Right. And even though I'm sure I share many of their values about nature and trees, that's I'd feel a little uncomfortable. It's kind of like charismatic environmentalist.
Yeah.
I'm a little less emotional, although I can be certainly emotionally touched by a clear cut or some great waste or tragedy in nature, but I'm probably not going to pull my hair out and sit in sackcloth and ashes in front of the dead trees in the forest. But I mean, the other end of the group, they don't sit around and cry about it. They're like militant environmentalists in Earth First, and they will actually proactively destroy lumber equipment, machinery. They'll spike trees. So if you try to cut them down, the chainsaw, well, actually, they spike them high, and they're quite brilliant. They've gone to these ceramic spikes so that lumber companies can't find them with metal detectors. And then when those spikes, that log that's cut down goes through the mills and it hits those big blades, it will break the blades and they'll have to switch them out, which will shut the plant down for 30 minutes, an hour, however long. And so they figure they're sacrificing that tree in order to slow down the slaughter of the other trees in the forest. But Earth First, very interesting. And so you have a big spectrum. Any other comments on those hippies? I love hippies.
Wait, can you unmute her?
Yeah, we got put.
Kaylee, did you want to say something?
Yeah, hold on.
Oh,
Sorry. Sorry, I had to unmute one of the other computers nearby. Basically, like with the first one, like I actually thought, like I didn't see that as like a satire. I thought it was gonna be like an actual real thing. So, but
the only reason I knew was because I knew the first video and they were saying the same lines verbatim, and then I was like, oh my gosh, they're mocking those hippies. So go ahead, Kaylee.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely just thought it was a very strange thing. Like if I saw those people, I'd probably like stay far away from them.
Well, I could introduce you to them if you'd like.
I am good. I am good. I appreciate the offer, but I am good.
Yeah, those are definitely my people. I know them well.
So I came up on the second video. I was running a little bit late, and I was sad. I also trees.
And they were sincere. I mean, they weren't playing around.
Well, and just, I mean, anybody being that upset or sad over anything would make me sad. But I also love trees and would be very sad if somebody, I've been sad when people and my neighbors have cut down their nice trees. So I wouldn't be quite as dramatic because that's just not how I generally express myself. But I felt their emotions as well and felt sad with them.
On the old campus about 20 years ago, they cut down one of the big hemlock trees that it was in the turnaround there right when you came into campus, and they cut it down because they wanted to put up a little sign to tell you where the different buildings were on campus. They could have put the sign in front of the tree. And I was so upset because I was there when that tree was planted, and it was over 30 feet tall. It was as tall as a 3-story admin building. And there's still a few of its companions that are still there, planted at the same time. And they just cut it down. And I was so upset, I canceled my classes and went home. And I got mocked by the other faculty and most of the students. But then, like 5 years later, they wanted to enclose an area that was a lawn with, once again, 30, 40-foot pine trees that had been planted when the Catholics built the property. And I'm thinking, for heaven's sakes, these trees can never be replaced in my lifetime. And I was upset, but I was just like, I don't have control on this campus. I can't say who lives or dies, who gets cut down, who gets pruned. And I was frustrated, but in that 5-year period, when I was the only one that even thought it was a problem, to 5 years later, there were students holding like prayer vigils out in the quad and holding arms around the fallen tree stump, and just like these hippies. And of course, I got blamed for it. Like I started some movement, but I was just like, maybe they really care. Maybe they realize you're just wantonly killing life that doesn't need to die with complete disregard. But anyways, this next video I'm going to show you comes from a series of these two brothers, and they look to me like they're in their early mid 30s, and they decide to just go explore the archipelagos of Indonesia. And so they are traveling by boat from island to island because it's just like a cultural smorgasbord. Each island is its own culture. Some islands have multiple cultures. And they're not really academics. They're more just kind of like free spirit adventurers. But they made this video series, and you can find a lot of them on YouTube. And this one I thought was super interesting because it combines Eastern mysticism with animism. And this guy is actually able to like heal people with the energy, the chi coming through his body, but he can also like shock you, and he can light fires just with the chi coming through him. And so I want you to watch this, and we'll talk about it afterwards. So back to my share video.
I first met him in the early 80s in a Chinatown of urban Java. He didn't want his real name or address revealed, so we called him DJ for Dynamo Jack. He was only a healer, he said, but he did direct a powerful energy generated from his own body into his patients. For years, we followed him around Java on his healing rounds, pleading to be allowed to film him, but he always refused, saying his powers resulted from a type of meditation with an ancient tradition of secrecy. It was only when my brother Lorne was suffering from a serious eye infection that he finally allowed us to film him in 1987.
Lorne was suffering from a bad eye infection at the time, a cameraman's cause for panic. Lawrence had heard of a man who might be able to help and dragged me to him despite my reservations. Is it in? Just for that, he uses acupuncture needles in the traditional points, but with a twist. Through them, he directs a form of electricity, as he calls it. But he doesn't draw the electricity from a wall socket. He claims to generate it within his own body. It was nothing like any acupuncture I'd ever had. I was getting really powerful electric shocks and couldn't control my movements at all. He says that what he does is no more supernatural than an electric eel, which also knows how to harness its yin and yang energies.
Yin yang, positive and negative, you know? And my positive from here and my negative from here. And we meet together, this can get like electricity.
And is this because you're special? You have a special sort of...
It's for meditation every day.
It's meditation.
Meditation every day. Like a yoga. But I study about 18 years.
18 years.
18 years from my child before.
Can you project this energy through your hands only or through other things as well?
Only my
Only my
like you can touch me like this. It's nothing, okay? It's my burn. Just like this.
Our sound recordist, Simi, was skeptical at first. Later, he told us that anybody could learn this. God had given us all the yin-yang polarity, but it takes discipline and meditation to awaken and control it.
Harus latih lagi. Kita harus belajar lagi, meditasi lagi.
And you must be very aware of your emotions.
Lalu emosi kita pukul orang bisa itu very dangerous. Bisa mati.
This energy can be dangerous.
Yeah.
It can kill as well as heal.
Yeah.
Kita biasanya
Then he asked for our newspaper. Whatever he had done to our newspaper, it's how he'd healed my eyes that made me wonder. What do these people living in the shadows of the volcanoes still know that we of the West have forgotten?
When he heard we'd shown this footage in public, he was very upset and refused all our future efforts to contact him again. As the years passed, we sadly resigned ourselves to never seeing him again. My brother Lorne never did, for by 1997 he was already dead, when I again found myself with DJ, now treating me for an eye problem. But it wasn't this that brought me back. He had tracked me down out of the blue and invited me to tell me a story. He had just returned from 2 years on a deep meditational journey, alone in the heart of Borneo. Amongst his revelations, he had seen, he said, how history was moving on into great change, and the old wisdom was vanishing. So he called me back to film just enough of him to remind us that we all have undreamed of powers sleeping within us, and that there's nothing special about him except for his training in waking. He seems able to control the amplitude of this chi, like a dimmer switch, and it causes uncontrollable responses in the patients and their grounders.
I can barely keep my hand on you. Fly off, the electricity so strong.
Sometimes signs of this passing energy can be seen in the transmitter too. This chi stuff is only the surface, he says, of the real adventure beneath, in the meditational technique.
No.
Projecting chi from the palm of the hand can also be used to resist rifle pellets, he says. First, you learn to distinguish between yin and yang chi in your body. Then how to pull it in your navel chakra. Then how to project it, he says. And it's the proportionate mixture between yin and yang which accounts for different effects, like pulling or pushing objects or igniting them. So I invited a small group of scientists back from the United States with measuring equipment to test if DJ was for real. And if so, where might this energy belong on the electromagnetic spectrum? Catherine Cook, CEO of the Mind Science Foundation in Texas. Dr. Roger Nilsson, a Swedish medic and international racing sailor. Dr. Greg Simpson, a physicist from New York's Albert Einstein University, and Andreas Polak, one of DJ's Australian students. The visitors are confident they'll uncover him as a fraud in no time. Greg is the first guinea pig, and he's uncomfortable about showing that he can feel anything at all. Dr. Roger doesn't know what to expect. Out comes the metal detector, like the things they use in airports, to see if he has any concealed metal in his body. Then the voltmeter, to try and measure the chi. But how to get it to work? Where's the ground? What settings? DJ suggests that as his negative is his perineum, and his positive is his navel chakra, perhaps that's where the electrode should be attached. He doesn't stand on his dignity. He's eager to help, but still no readings. They're getting shocks off his arm, and now they're on the right settings, but the needle still isn't moving. DJ says it isn't electricity, it's chi.
It's 1, 2, up. I feel it in my whole body. I feel it in 3, 0.3. I feel it in my legs. Straight down.
But suspecting there's some tricky setup on his premises they can't find, they insist we all go to a randomly chosen hotel room several miles away to see if he can light a light bulb with his fingers. It doesn't ground on the wall. So Greg holds and grounds one wire, while DJ pumps chi through the other. The bulbs are LEDs, light-emitting diodes, which ignite in different colors according to the intensity of current.
On, off, on.
Brilliant.
Oh, you're blinking.
Things were going well. DJ was enjoying it too, until he invited us all out to lunch at his local, where he tried to push a chopstick through the table. He couldn't get it through the formica surface, so he came up through an inch of wood from underneath. Not only did he draw his own blood, but a chopstick splinter had caught Alison here between the eyes, drawing more. The incident was laughed off apologetically, but next morning he was a different man, drawn and upset. He said he'd been visited all night by his long-dead master, raging that he'd broken the strict taboos of his sect, never to show off in public and never to cause harm or draw blood. He felt deeply chastised. All further testing and filming must end. Never again would he submit to public scrutiny, nor accept any new students. He would sink from sight and continue his healing in obscurity, as he had done since before we met him in the early 80s, and had always told us was right.
Any thoughts about that guy? And like I said, those two brothers did a whole series where they just go from island to island. Now, they were just young adventurers, and I have some problems with them. I think kind of how they interacted with a lot of the indigenous people, and I don't know how many babies they left behind on the different islands because of their relationships with the island girls and all that. But I am in love with the cultural anthropology part and their boldness too, how they would just go. They had encounters with pirates, with cannibals, with headhunters, and they were just there with their cameras filming away. But I thought this Qigong one was super interesting. And I don't know, any thoughts about that? Okay, well, on to the next one. This has to do with the Day of the Dead, which we see celebrated around the world. Right now, we're coming into Halloween, but that is an Americanization of the Catholic All Hallows Eve, which is a celebration of those who have died before us in Christ. But that was a Catholic veneer over the Celtic Samhain. And it's spelled like Samhain, Samhein, but it's pronounced Samhain. And October 31st was New Year's Eve for the Celts. November 1st was their New Year's. And they believed at this time of the year, the veil between the physical and the spiritual world was the thinnest, and spirits would cross over, or you could cross over at this time. And so the idea was your dead ancestors might come by your house. So they would set up scary carvings and faces. And remember, pumpkins are a New World fruit or squash, whatever you want to call it. They didn't have them in Europe. So the people in Europe would like carve turnips and things like that, a jack-o'-turnip or a turnip lantern instead of a jack-o'-lantern. But I can just imagine the two options were to either try to scare off the dead or to supplicate them by leaving out treats on the front porch. And that's where we get trick or treat from. And you can just imagine some young people thinking, hey, if we dressed up like dead people and went door to door, we could make quite the killing. But it's not just my people, the Celts, that celebrated the dead or were afraid of the dead. We have the next two videos. I'm going to show you Japan's Obon Festival, where they actually invite the dead and they dance with them. And then, of course, the Dia de los Muertos, the Mexican Day of the Dead, is also coming up. But this is something we see around the world. And the idea here is I'm going to stop this real quick. The idea behind this is there's 4 categories of being. And so, like those of us here, we are the living. Once we pass, we enter into what's called the living dead. And the living dead is this in-between place between the living and the spirits. And so, like in animistic cultures, you have all these spirits, you have dead people, and then you have the living people. You stay in this living dead place until the last living person who knew you passes and dies. And when this person dies and comes into the living dead realm, then this person goes up into the spirit realm. And the spirits are intermediaries between the living dead and deity or deities. Depending on the culture, they may have one or many gods. So here's God, here's the spirit realm, the living dead, and the living. And so, like all my dead relatives that I knew, they're still in this place, but they can act as intermediaries for me, almost like in Catholic praying to saints. These are those who have died before us, but we still hold them in memory, and we ask them to intercede for us to the spirit realm or to the divine realm. And so that's kind of the benefit of having benevolent dead ancestors. Or like in the story of Mulan, where they had the shrine to her dead relatives, and they could either thwart you or they could aid you. But just because they're dead doesn't mean they're no longer involved in your life. It simply means they're no longer connected to their physical bodies. It doesn't mean they've ceased to exist or to be active. All right, so check out these 2 cultures and how they celebrate the Day of the Dead and how different it is than how we do this here in America. America's a trip. Or like my Celtic people with Samhain. They have one of these up in Escondido at this Japanese Buddhist temple every year. I forget what time of year it is. It's probably around now, would be my guess. But it's super fun. It's super interesting. And they invite the community, and you can go out there and dance with the Japanese Buddhist and with the dead. This would be good for the Japanese culture to maybe look into a little bit, that group. Oh, bud.
主人の仕事は漁師でした。性格は頑固な人でした。H は仕事人間なので一日も仕事は休みませんでした。朝お仕事へ行って昼過ぎに浜で気分が悪くなり倒れて救急車で運ばれてそのまま意識不明で6日間病院でその後亡くなりました。お寺の1000個立ての砂をきれいに変えるため砂を取りに行く。
司法上来受登場参加落法税赤夜上来受登場参加落法税ビタ上来一無浄土志願不満毒性不上昇学が大無料語阿弥陀仏やてやてはらやてはらそうやてなまなまなまいやどうもじゃあお色ございましてすみませんでしたありがとうございますどうもすみませんありがとうございましたどうもありがとうございましたもちろんすみませんごちらこそ何ということもありがとうございましたすみませんでしたどうもありがとうございますどうもありがとうございましたどうもすみませんどうもありがとうございました
提灯と松明は先祖さんと主人が道を間違えないようにするため。先祖さんを海に気をつけて帰りなさいよって言って送りに行く。
All right, this next one is from Mexican Day of the Dead. And if you saw that, is it Disney that did Coco? Whoever did the cartoon Coco, it's about the Day of the Dead, and it follows right along with as long as someone is known or remembered or celebrated, they have a vital life in that living dead place. But once no one remembers you, you begin to fade and you transition to that next stage. And I thought they did a really great job portraying that in the movie Coco.
The Day of the Dead is regarded as a time where the dead can come alive again. The dead is nothing we have to be afraid of. It's just part of life that we have to face. And in Mexican culture, that has become actually really important in the way we perceive life.
The Day of the Dead is a festival, and in that sense, very much a celebration. And I suppose that is something that appeals to European and North American people, because that's not the way that we understand death. Death is, for us, a sad moment. We do remember our dead, but we remember them in times of solemnity.
I can see how this kind of tradition gets connection with other people. This celebration is a demonstration of generosity, with the richness of color, with the sound, with the air, with the paper that moves, talk between all the family, not with sadness, not like someone that we lost, but like someone who is still with us.
It's a multi-sensory experience, I think, both for the people who make the altar and for the dead that visit. People go on journeys with the offerings and take them to the burial places. And they're sort of exploring this idea of the boundary between the living and the dead. It's a liminal place, and liminal places often need catalysts to bring things closer together. They eat together and, of course, listen to music and remember fondly their dead.
What is interesting in this celebration is not that the dead is coming to eat or is coming to drink on the night, because we cannot see them. The grandmother says that they take the spirit of things, and they take the love of us.
It's really impressive how the atmosphere becomes really, really nice. The smell of all the flowers that have been torn apart to create that atmosphere actually makes you feel that you are going through something else beyond life. It's conveyed by the flowers, and it's really weird because it's the same smell, but it can tell you so many different things.
Day of the Dead as well is something to show us how the colonizations and the changes in the history of a country may include the new things, but preserving tradition.
What we're really talking about is what you see in a lot of cultures, which is material culture or images and ideas being transferred through time, obviously evolving as they come into contact with other cultures. So Mexican culture is very much a mix of the different pre-Hispanic Mesoamerican cultures that existed before the Spanish conquest and all of the influence that came from Europe, which wasn't just from Spain.
I appreciate the sense of celebration. To be able to celebrate even the dead, people continue alive on the memories of others. And I think memories is really important in a world where it's so easy to forget.
All right. Any thoughts or comments on either of those two? For those of you who are doing the Mexican gang culture, you might want to tie in some of that. You don't have to, but I think there are certain saints that are actually looked to by the gang members in Mexico. They're like these gangland saints that they like tattoo on their bodies and all that. So you might want to research into that, those of you that are doing that group. Anyone have any comments, questions, stories with this material? Okay, well, I have 3 more videos for you. You're welcome to watch. They're an introduction from my world religions class to pantheism, the Eastern religions, and I'll probably do some more for you on an intro to the Western. But you can watch those at your leisure. If no one wants to talk to me, I'm going to call it a day. Okay, we all good? All right. I did put up the book report guidelines, so you don't have to do a discussion board this week. I'll use the book report to take roll. And like I said, even though it's posted this week, it's not due till November 12th. So you do have time. And like I said, it can be a children's book. You don't have to read some 500-page Russian novel or something to do this assignment. All right. Take care, class. I'll see you, Lord willing, Thursday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.